The Torah portion today starts in Deuteronomy 3. I'm going to slaughter this name. It's Va-etchanan, and it means I will plead. So let's go ahead and get started with the blessing. Blessed are you, Jehovah our God, King of the universe, who has sanctified us with his commandments, and has commanded us to engross ourselves in the words of Torah. Please, Jehovah our God, sweeten the words of Torah in our mouth, and in the mouth of your people, the family of Israel. May we and our offspring and the offspring of your people, the house of Israel, all of us know your name and study your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Jehovah, who teaches Torah to his people Israel. Amen. The first reading this morning is Deuteronomy 3, verses 23 through chapter 4, verse 4. Can I get a volunteer to read that? Ava? Oh, you can read the next one, Michael.
Then I pleaded with the Lord at that time, saying, O Lord God, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do anything like your works and your mighty deeds? I pray, let me cross over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, those pleasant mountains and Lebanon. But the Lord was angry with me on your account and would not listen to me. So the Lord said to me, Enough of that. Speak no more to me of this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah and lift your eyes toward the west, the north, the south, and the east. Behold it with your eyes, for you shall not cross over this Jordan. But command Joshua, encourage him and strengthen him, for he shall go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land which you will see. So we stayed in the valley opposite Beth Peor. Now, O Israel, listen to the statutes and the judgments which I teach you to observe, that you may live. Go in and possess the land which the Lord your God of your fathers is giving you. You shall not add to the word which I command you, nor take from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God which I command you. Your eyes have seen what the Lord did at Baal Peor, for the Lord your God has destroyed from among you all the men who followed Baal of Peor. But you held fast to the Lord your God, are alive today, every one of you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any comments on this section? Yeah, Luther?
So I was looking at this morning, and verse 26 kind of stood out to me. It said, but Adonai was angry with me on account of you. And I wrote a little note here. It said, one should not suppose that God will fail to hold him accountable for the actions of those under his charge. I think a lot of times maybe myself, you think about parental things or leadership things, and you're like, well, I'm doing right, I'm living right, I'm setting a good example, but those under me might not be following, or they might not be doing what they're supposed to be doing. And we just assume that we're going to get a pass, right? I think we have to be very careful that those that we have stewardship over, leadership over, their actions, we might be held responsible for. Something to consider.
Yeah, I think that's very good, and I think you can definitely glean that from that verse. And that brings me into one of the things I was going to bring up in a little bit, but I'll go ahead and talk on it now. And it's one of the things that I appreciate about having come into this walk and seen the importance of learning the Hebrew and knowing the meanings, and how there's so much depth in the Hebrew, and how one phrase can mean one thing at one level and another thing at another level, and it just really makes everything come alive, because, well, it definitely speaks to what Luther said. If you go back to Numbers 20, it's Jehovah talking to Moses, and he says, it's because you didn't believe me and treat me as holy before Israel. And it's talking about when he hit the rock. And so not only is Moses somewhat held accountable for the actions of the Israelites, but also his actions in front of the Israelites as a protection to the Israelites, um, showing them that Moses isn't above accountability. His actions are still he's still held accountable for them, and he isn't held to a different standard. And so the Father is punishing him for the benefit of the people that are under him as well. Okay. Dean?
I was just going to say in verse 27, it says, verse 28, but command Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him, for he shall go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land which you will see. You know, Joshua is the same name as Yehoshua, and it's like a lot of people in the Sunday church would say, see, the law was only up until, right? Yet we understand that the law of Moses came, it's still relevant because the law didn't stop when they entered the land. And the land in the book of Hebrews, and the writer of Hebrews used it as a representation of the final rest, right? Just like today, this Shabbat is representation of the rest that we will enter into. And it's those that have the commandments of God and the testimony of Yeshua that will enter into that rest. And like, what does all of that mean? The symbolic meaning of it all, and how Moses stopped before he entered that physical rest, that land of rest. Yet here in the spiritual, I look at it in all the symbolic, ways you can put these things together as we walk until we enter that final rest. We walk, and it's Yeshua that enters us in. It's he who causes us to inherit that final rest. Yet the law will go forth from Zion. So it never stops. It never ceases to be relevant. And, that's kind of when I read that, I think it's prophetic and very good.
Yeah, and on that, to piggyback off that a little bit, Valor and I were talking last night as we were going over this. Moses is a shadow of Yeshua, but Moses couldn't bring the people into the promised land, and he got almost to the promised land, but the shadow stopped, and Yeshua had to come, and he's the one that's going to bring us all into the promise, into the land.
Sorry, I want to piggyback. And I meant to say this. And just real quick, I want to say, in the book of John, it says, the law came through Moses, and that but is actually not in the Greek. It's not there because that but makes it sound like these two things are at odds. But grace and truth came through the Lord. And it's like, they're not at odds with one another. They walk hand in hand. And I think that but shouldn't be there personally, because they both play roles. But it's only under the grace of God you've ever been given the final rest. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Do we have any other comments on this section? Kind of in that same vein, just how we have, a picture of two messiahs in the Torah. We have the suffering servant and we have the warrior king. Moses is kind of a shadow of that suffering servant, and Joshua is a shadow of that warrior king going into the land and conquering. So I thought that was a pretty neat parallel there. If we don't have any other, Michael, will you read the next section? It's chapter 4, verses 5 through 40.
Behold, I have taught you statutes and judgments, even as Yahweh my God commanded me, that you should go do so in the land whither you go to possess it. Keep therefore and do them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the nations, which shall bear all these statutes, and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what nation is there so great? Who hath God so nigh unto them as the Lord our God is in all things that we call upon him for? What nation is there so great that hath statutes and judgments so righteous as all this law, which I set before you this day? Only take heed to thyself, and keep thy soul diligently, lest thou forget the things which thine eyes have seen, and lest they depart from thy heart all the days of thy life. But teach them thy sons and thy sons' sons, especially the day that thou stoodest before Yahweh thy God in the Horeb, when Yahweh said unto me, Gather me the people together, and I will make them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days that they shall live and upon the earth, and that they may teach their children. And ye came near and stood under the mountain, and the mountains burned with fire under the midst of heaven, with darkness and clouds, and with darkness, thick darkness. And Yahweh spoke unto them out of the midst of the fire. Ye heard the voice of the words, but saw no similitude, only ye heard a voice. And he declared unto you this covenant which he commanded you to perform, even 10 commandments, and he wrote upon them 2 tablets of stone. And Yahweh commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that you might do them, and in the land whither you go over to possess it. Take ye therefore good heed unto yourselves, for ye saw no manner of similitude in the day that Yahweh spake unto you in Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest ye corrupt yourselves and make you a graven image and similitude of any figure of the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any beast that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged fowl that flieth on the air, the likeness of anything that creepeth on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the waters beneath the earth. Lest thou lift up thine eyes unto heaven, and when thou seest the sun and the moon and the stars, or even all the host of heaven, shouldest thou driven to worship them and serve them, which the Lord thy God hath divided unto all nations unto the whole heaven. And Yahweh had taken you, and brought you forth out of the iron furnace, even out of Egypt, to be unto him an inheritance, as ye are this day. Furthermore, Yahweh was angry with me for your sakes, and sware that I should not go over Jordan, and that I should not go unto the good land which Yahweh thy God giveth thee for an inheritance. But I must die in this land. I must not go over Jordan, but ye shall go over and possess that good land. Take heed unto yourselves, lest ye forget the covenant of Yahweh your God, which he had made with you, and make you a graven image, or the likeness of anything which Yahweh your God forbidden thee. For Yahweh thy God is a consuming fire, even a jealous God. When thou shalt beget children, and the children's children, and ye shall have remained in the land, and ye shall corrupt yourselves, and make a graven image, or the likeness of anything, and shall do evil in the sight of Yahweh thy God, to provoke him to anger. I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that ye shall soon utterly perish from off the land whereunto ye go over the Jordan to possess it. Ye shall not prolong your days upon it, but ye shall utterly be destroyed. And Yahweh shall scatter you among the nations, and ye shall be left few in number among the heathen, whither Yahweh shall lead you. And there ye shall serve gods in the works of men's hands, in wood and stone, which neither see, nor hear, nor eat, nor smell. But if from thence thou shalt seek Yahweh thy God, thou shalt find him. And if thou seek him with all thy heart and with all thy soul, when thou art in tribulation, and all these things are upon thee, even in the latter days, if thou turn to Yahweh thy God, and shalt be obedient unto his voice, for Yahweh thy God is a merciful God. He will not forsake thee, nor neither destroy thee, nor forget the covenant of thy fathers, which he sware unto them. For ask now of the days that are past, which were before thee, since the day that Yahweh created man upon the earth, and ask them from the one side of heaven unto the other, whether there be any such thing as like great thing is, or hath been heard like it. Neither ever people hear the voice of Yahweh speaking out of the midst of the fire, as thou hast heard and live. Or hath Yahweh attempted to go and take him a nation from the midst of another nation, by temptations, by signs, and by wonders, and by war, and by mighty hand, and by a stretched out arm, and by great terrors, according to all that Yahweh your God did for you in Egypt before your enemies? Unto thee it is showed that thou mightest know that Yahweh he is God, there is none else beside him. Out of the heaven he made thee to hear his voice, and that he might instruct thee, and might and upon the earth he showed this his great fire, and has heard us his words out of the midst of the fire. And because he loved thy fathers, therefore he chose their seed after them, and he brought thee out in his sight with his mighty power out of Egypt, to drive out nations from before thee, greater and mightier than thee art, to bring thee in, to give thee their land for an inheritance as it is this day. Know therefore this day, and consider in thine heart, that Yahweh he is a God in heaven above, and upon the earth beneath there is none else. Thou shalt keep therefore his statutes, his commandments, which I command thee this day, that it may go well with thee, and with thy children after thee, and that thou mayest prolong thy days upon the land, which Yahweh thy God giveth thee forever.
All right, thank you, Michael. Do we have any comments on this section? John?
I can't remember. My short-term memory was damaged by the second and third stroke. Did I talk about Exodus 20 before?
Not recently.
Okay. In Exodus 20, God himself speaks from Horeb, the Ten Commandments. So Israel heard those 10 commandments in Hebrew. Israel is terrified because they're seeing fire and smoke and other things that are terrifying. So they beg Moses to listen to what God has to say. God says that's good what they decided, and so Moses for 39 years has remembered this what God told him, and it may seem strange that an old man who's 120 years old can remember word for word the text, but for example, a missionary in a Stone Age tribe, he talked to them in their language, and he was gone for 5 years, and when he returned 5 years later, Stone Age tribe members remembered word for word what he had said. At the end of Deuteronomy, in Moses' song, he mentions angels without specifying this, but also Paul in Galatians 3 mentions angels again, and I believe that angels were present both at the discussion that God had with Moses, and also at the time when Moses was speaking to Israel 39 years later. And so the angels serve as a witness. Nowhere in Deuteronomy is it mentioned that Moses had any speech difficulty or stuttering. Why is that? So a person who stutters, if they're remembering a conversation with someone else and speaking that conversation, does not stutter. So that explains this part where we're reading, but also other parts in Moses' song at the end of Deuteronomy, he sings it when a person who stutters sings, they don't stutter, and that's because stuttering is a left brain activity, but singing is a right brain activity. So the area of the brain that's a problem does not come into account. Another point, in 1950, we know that Moses was trained as a royal in Pharaoh's court for 40 years. Egypt had trade relations with the Hittite kingdom. Hittites were located in central Anatolia, which is Turkey today. Their capital city was Bogaskoy. They covered most of Turkey, and also Egypt had a formal treaty called the Parity Treaty with the Hittites, and parity means it was a treaty among equals. But another type of treaty in 1954, George Mendenhall wrote a paper in which he described 6 or 7 different consecutive points in a second type of treaty format called a suzerainty, SUZEINT, I think just why. Vassal treaty. Vassal was spelled VASSAL. That was a type of treaty where the Hittite kingdom would, as the suzerain, the superior one, would enact a treaty with the surrounding nations, which were vassals. And Deuteronomy exactly fits that description. For example, we read earlier that I called heaven and earth as witness, and in the suzerainty treaties, instead of heaven and earth being called, all kinds of false gods were called as witnesses, both from Hittites and also the vassal. The areas that we've gone through so far, the first 5 verses of Deuteronomy 1 were prologue. Second, around verse 6 becomes the historical prologue. Now in a suzerainty treaty, historical prologue was a rehearsal of the previous relationships between Hittite kingdom and also the vassal. So the prologue continues until verse 43 in chapter 4. In the Hittite treaties, I said that already. Okay, so in 44, the covenant stipulations begin. And as you know, Okay.
All right, thank you, John. Do we have any other comments on this section? In my notes, I have that this is kind of, this chapter or this section that we just read is kind of the heart of Deuteronomy. It talks about, as with the entirety of the Torah, how Jehovah wants to dwell with us and how he is the one and the only God, not the top dog, but the only God. And I've got a bunch of other notes on this section, but in the so we can keep on and maybe get through this portion. Let's go ahead and move on to the next section. If I can get a volunteer to read verses 41 through 49 of Deuteronomy chapter 4.
You said chapter 4, verse 40 through 49?
41 through 49.
41 through 49. Okay. Then Moses set apart 3 cities on this side of the Jordan, toward the rising of the sun, that the manslayer might flee there, who kills his neighbor unintentionally, without having hated him in time past, and that by fleeing to one of these cities he might live. Bezar in the wilderness on the plateau of the Reubenites, Ramoth and Gilead for the Gadites, and Golan and Bashan for the Manassites. Now this is the law which Moses set before the children of Israel. These are the testimonies, the statutes, and the judgments which Moses spoke to the children of Israel after they came out of Egypt. On this side of the Jordan, in the valley opposite Beth Peor, in the land of Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt in Heshbon, whom Moses and the children of Israel defeated after they came out of Egypt. And they took possession of his land in the land of Og, king of Bashan, 2 kings of the Amorites, who were on this side of the Jordan, toward the rising of the sun, from Auror, which is on the bank of the river Arnon, even to Mount Sion, that is Hermon, and all the plain on the east side of the Jordan, as far as the sea of the Arabah, below the slopes of Pisgah.
All right, thank you. Do we have any comments on this section? I know in reading this and in the last couple of Torah portions, we talked about the tribes, some of the tribes deciding, you know what, we're this close to the promised land, but it's kind of nice where we're at. Let's just stay here. You think the Father will let us do that? Because we don't, and it kind of always strikes me as, you know, we know the Father's got something good, but this is good enough for us. But the Father works with them where they're at, and he okays that request, and he lets them stay there. And he even provides the same things for them on that side of the Jordan River that he's going to provide for the rest of the tribes that go into the land he intentionally promised for them. He gives them the refuge cities and the whole kit and caboodle. And I just find that interesting. Anybody else have any comments on that section? Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick, you know, that's Hermon and Og and all the Bashan. Bashan, I read, was also called the land of the snake dragon. Like it was, and if you read some extra biblical materials, it's a stronghold of the enemy. It says the prophetic psalm, I think it's 22. It says the bulls of Bashan have encircled me, which is speaking of the Messiah. Like all of these things, and here is a clear inheritance that is his land. It's the Father's land. It's not the land of the enemy any longer. And even when Messiah, I think it's in Matthew 17, he goes up to the Mount of Transfiguration. A lot of people believe that was Mount Hermon because it's the highest mountain near Caesarea Philippi, which was also the gates of hell where they worship Pan. All of those things. Like if you add all of that stuff in, but then you go back into this inheritance, I think that there was ultimately a plan from the Father. Like he already knew they were going to ask, right? So he's like, okay, yeah, this is not your stronghold, enemy. This is mine. And obviously the whole earth is his. But you know what I'm saying. And then when Messiah went up, was transfigured on Mount Hermon, which is where I believe Also, if you're reading the book of Enoch, that's where the fallen ones came down, decided to sleep with now, whatever you believe on all of that, I'm just telling you that's kind of what Enoch, the book of Enoch, taught. Now, whether that's true or not, that's neither here nor there. But it was definitely a stronghold of the enemy. And they actually found stone carvings. I can't remember the scientific name for them, not hieroglyphs, but petroglyphs or something like that, of snakes and dragons and things of that nature on top of that mountain. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah, geoglyphs, yeah.
Right. Well, shall we go ahead and read the next section here? Chapter 5, verses 1 through 18. Do we have a volunteer? Yeah, Kim?
Then Moshe called to all Israel and said to them, Listen, Israel, to the laws and rulings which I am announcing in your hearing today, so that you will learn them and take care to obey them. Adonai our God made a covenant with us at Horeb. Adonai did not make this covenant with our fathers, but with us who are all of us here alive today. Adonai spoke with you face to face from the fire on the mountain. At that time I stood between Adonai and you in order to tell you what Adonai was saying, because on account of the fire you were afraid and wouldn't go up onto the mountain. He said, I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt where you lived as slaves. You are to have no other gods before me. You are not to make for yourselves a carved image or any kind of representation of anything in heaven above, on the earth beneath, or in the water below the shoreline. You are not to bow down to them or serve them, for I, Adonai your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sins of the parents, also the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but displaying grace to the 1,000th generation of those who love me and obey my mitzvot. You are not to misuse the name of Adonai your God, because Adonai will not leave unpunished someone who misuses his name. Observe the day of Shabbat to set it apart as holy, as Adonai your God ordered you to do. You have 6 days to labor and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Shabbat for Adonai your God. On it you are not to do any kind of work, not you, your son, or your daughter, not your male or female slave, not your ox, your donkey, or any of your other livestock, and not the foreigner staying with you inside the gates to your property, so that your male and female servants can rest just as you do. You are to remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and Adonai your God brought you out from there with a strong hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore Adonai your God has ordered you to keep the day of Shabbat. Honor your father and mother, as Adonai your God ordered you to do, so that you will live long and have things go well with you in the land Adonai your God is giving you. Do not murder, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not give false evidence against your neighbor. Do not covet your neighbor's wife, do not covet your neighbor's house, his field, his male or female slave, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor.
Right, thank you. I think these words are familiar because we read a lot of them just a chapter or so ago. And as we know, things that are repeated are to be definitely taken to heart. And while they're repeated in this Torah portion, they're also repeated in the Torah in other places as well. I think these are a lot of the really important things from Torah. Obviously, this is a restatement of the Ten Commandments as given in Exodus 20. I think there's a big push here to not just learn, but to learn and do, to listen and obey, to Shema. Because I think our friend in the New Testament, James, says faith without works is dead. And so, do we have any other comments on this section? Yes.
Yes, I noticed chapter 5, verse 4. The Lord talked with you face to face in the mount out of the midst of the fire. And, the giving of the 10 Commandments is the greatest event in history. And going back to chapter 4, verses 13 and 14, It says, and he declared unto you his covenant which he commanded you to perform, even the 10 Commandments, and he wrote them upon 2 tables of stone. Then in verse 14 it says, so in 13 it emphatically says he commanded you and he spoke directly to you. And then in verse 14 it says, and the Lord commanded me, meaning Moses, at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that ye might do them in the land whither ye go over to possess it. So I'm seeing there that the Lord spoke the 10 Commandments directly to the Hebrews, and the statutes and judgments, Moses commanded those to them. And then in Deuteronomy 10, it talks about the 10 Commandments are in the ark, and the law of Moses, this is Deuteronomy 31, the book is in the side of the ark. So I'm seeing a differentiation between the 10 Commandments and the law of Moses in statutes and judgments. And God wrote the 10 Commandments, and 2 Chronicles, Moses wrote the ordinances. So I'm just saying, I'm seeing there is a differentiation.
There is a little bit there, but also I believe that Moses wrote the set of 10 Commandments that survived. I think he broke the ones that God wrote because he was angry. But also, in the giving of the 10 Commandments, that's if just a few chapters ago or a chapter or so ago, we were reading the Father was speaking to the Israelites, and they got scared. And they said, Moses, we're scared. You go listen and come back and tell us what he said. And the Father said to Moses, you know what? They're right in that. They should have that fear of me. So I think that in verse 14 where you read, Jehovah ordered Moses to teach them the laws and the statutes and all of those things. So I believe that we can take everything that is in Torah as a directive from the Father. And I've got some notes back in chapter 4 about his directives. There's several different kinds, because there's statutes and judgments and commandments and testimonies. All of those things the Father handed down through Moses to us. The statutes, the Hebrew word for that is hukim, and there's no offered rationale for those. It's just the Father said this, so we do it. And the judgments, or the mishpatim, there's an obvious rationale, A equals B, so C happens, kind of a thing. The testimonies, the idot, those are just kind of, expoundings upon things. And so those are the kinds of different things that we have. Mike, you've got a comment?
Yeah, the term the law of Moses is used in a way that just describes who delivered it to the people.
He touched it last.
But it was Yahweh's law, and in Malachi 4, it mentions there that in 4:4, remember the law of Moses my servant, which I commanded unto him in Horeb for all Israel, with the statutes and judgments. So the law of Moses was just what Yahweh gave him to deliver to the people, but it's often called the law of Moses, but it's actually the law of Yahweh with the statutes and the judgments and the ordinances.
Absolutely. Do you have any other comments on this section? If not, we'll go ahead and read the next section. If I can get a volunteer to read chapter 5, verses 1. We just read that, I think. chapter 5, verses 19 through chapter 6, verse 3. And I'll go ahead and read that. These words Jehovah spoke to your entire gathering at the mountains from fire, cloud, and thick mist in a loud voice, and then it ceased. But he wrote them on 2 stone tablets, which he gave to me. When you heard the voice coming out of the darkness as the mountain blazed with fire, you came to me, all the heads of your tribes and your leaders, and said, Here, Jehovah our God has shown us his glory and his greatness. We have heard his voice coming from the fire. And we have seen today that Jehovah does speak with human beings, and they stay alive. But why should we keep risking death? This great fire will consume us. If we hear the voice of Jehovah our God any more, we will die. For who is there of all humanity that has heard the voice of the living God speaking from the fire, as we have, and stayed alive? You go near and hear everything Jehovah our God says. And then you will tell us everything Jehovah our God says to you, and we will listen to it and do it. Jehovah heard what you were saying when you spoke to me, and Jehovah said to me, I have heard what this people has said when speaking to you, and everything they have said is good. Oh, how I wish their hearts would stay like this always, that they would fear me and obey me, all my mitzvot, so that it would go well with them and their children forever. Go tell them to return to their tents, but you stand here by me, and I will tell you all the mitzvot, laws, and rulings which you are to teach them, so that they can obey them in the land that I am giving them as their possession. Therefore you are to be careful to do as Jehovah your God has ordered you. You are not to deviate either to the right or to the left. You are to follow the entire way which Jehovah your God has ordered you, so that you will live. Things will go well with you, and you will live long in the land you are about to possess. Now this is the mitzvah, the laws and the rulings which Jehovah your God ordered me to teach you, for you to obey in the land you are crossing over to possess, so that you will fear Jehovah your God, and observe all his regulations and mitzvot that I am giving you, your child, your grandchild, as long as you live, so that you will have long life. Therefore listen, Israel, and take care to obey, so that the things will go well with you, and that you will increase greatly, as Jehovah the God of your ancestors promised you, by giving you a land flowing with milk and honey. Do we have any comments on that section? All right, if we have none, can I get a volunteer to read the next section, which is chapter 6, verses 4 through 25. This is one that should be familiar to all of us.
Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear Israel, Adonai your God, Adonai is one. And you are to love Adonai your God with all your heart, all your being, and all your resources. These words which I am ordering you today are to be on your heart, and you are to teach them carefully to your children. You are to talk about them when you sit at home, when you are traveling on the road, when you lie down, and when you get up. Tie them on your hand as a sign. Put them at the front of a headband around your forehead, and write them on the door frames of your house and on your gates. When Adonai your God has brought you into the land he swore to your ancestors, Abraham, Yitzhak, and Yaakov, that he would give you cities great and prosperous, which you didn't build, houses full of all sorts of good things, which you didn't fill, water cisterns dug out, which you didn't dig, vineyards and olive trees, which you didn't plant, and you have eaten your fill. Then be careful not to forget Adonai, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, where you lived as slaves. You are to fear Adonai your God, serve him, and swear by his name. You are not to follow other gods, chosen from the gods of the peoples around you, because Adonai your God who is here with you is a jealous God. If you do, the anger of Adonai your God will flare up against you, and he will destroy you from the face of the earth. Do not put Adonai your God to the test, as you tested him at Massah. Observe diligently the mitzvot of Adonai your God, and his instructions and laws which he has given you. You are to do what is right and good in the sight of Adonai, so that things will go well with you, and you will enter and possess the good land Adonai swore to your ancestors, expelling all your enemies ahead of you, as Adonai said. Someday your child will ask you, what is the meaning of the instructions, laws, and rulings which Adonai, our God, has laid down for you? Then you will tell your child, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and Adonai brought us out of Egypt with a strong hand. Adonai worked great and terrible signs and wonders against Egypt, Pharaoh, and all his household before our very eyes. He brought us out of there in order to bring us to the land he had sworn to our ancestors that he would give us. Adonai ordered us to observe all these laws, to fear Adonai our God, always for our own good, so that he might keep us alive as we are today. It will be righteousness for us if we are careful to obey all the mitzvot before Adonai our God, just as he ordered us to do.
All right, thank you. I really love that last section there. You know, when people ask us, why do we obey all of these mitzvot, all of these commandments? It's because he redeemed us. He brought us out of Egypt. I don't know of a better reason to do that. But do we have any other comments on this? All right, I'm getting the timeout signal, so let's go ahead and end with a blessing. Blessed are you, Jehovah our God, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth, implanting within us eternal life. Blessed are you, Jehovah our God, who gives the Torah. Amen.